Bitcoin is all about liberty. Yeah? The crypto is really about gaining more liberty, bringing liberty back to the individual. And I think our next speaker, Sterlin Luxan, will talk a lot about that. Sterlin Luxan from Bitcoin.com. Give a big hand to Sterlin. Hey, great to have you here.
Thank you very much.
The stage is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Aaron. How's everybody doing this morning? Everybody okay? Awesome. So the goal that I have in mind today for this presentation, which I call Crypto-Anarchism and the Future of Freedom, is to demonstrate the magnificence, the beauty, and the grandeur of where we're going with this technology. Like Diego just said, it's a mixture of generating a lot of wealth for society, but it's also important and powerful for its transformative ability. Let's start here. Who's familiar with Ray Kurzweil, by show of hands? So Ray Kurzweil is an American futurist, inventor, and technologist. And somebody asked him a question at one point, and that question was, do you believe if God exists or not? And Ray responded, not yet. I think that quote and his answer demonstrates where we're headed with this technology. And I want to start by providing an insight that I had into this idea of God and creating God. So this is an interesting thing. I was in Acapulco at the Acapulco conference, and I did a keynote there. And one of the days I decided to take a drug called MDMA. I took MDMA, and I was at a hotel restaurant, and it was overlooking the beach. Really beautiful scenery. And as I started to peak on MDMA, I was thinking about my role in this ecosystem. I was thinking about the technology and where we're going. Blockchain technology, as well as artificial intelligence technologies, etc. And at the peak of my experience, I thought, man, it really feels like we're building something big. It almost feels like we're manufacturing God. We're trying to create something so amazing that it's going to take us into a whole nother form of existence. In my mind, this idea of creating God is also a metaphor. It's a metaphor for freedom. It's a metaphor for statelessness. It's a metaphor for getting outside the scope of authority. And I think this is the big potential of blockchain technology and all technological innovation from here forward. Before I dive into this, and I provide this narrative and this story of where we were and where we're headed, we have to be clear on what anarchism means, because I mentioned freedom, and anarchism is intimately intertwined with this idea of freedom. So anarchism doesn't mean some punk rocker with a mohawk in leotards who's about to toss a Molotov cocktail into grandmother's window. That's not what anarchy means. Anarchy means without rulers. And this is the first iteration of a philosophical idea that suggests that we should be free as human beings, that we shouldn't have the central trusted third parties determine what they do with our money, or governments, bureaucrats, or kleptocrats telling us how we should live our lives. Now, the interesting thing about this concept of anarchism is it did merge with the technological spirit that we have as human beings. And this happened with the cypherpunk movement in the 1990s in San Francisco, California, and the Silicon Valley area. Who's familiar with the Cypherpunks by show of hands? There we go. Excellent. So the Cypherpunks had this idea that we should be able to take back freedom, anonymity, privacy for the people. They believed that we should be able to use digital technologies for the purposes of communicating with each other without having other people intercept those communications. They really believed that encryption-based protocols would help free humankind from the nasty, parasitic nature of government. Now, one of the ringleaders of the crypto-anarchist movement, his name was Timothy May, and he wrote a manifesto called the Crypto-Anarchist Manifesto. And I know that sounds really big and long, but it's 3 paragraphs, maybe 4. And in this manifesto, he says the things I just mentioned. The idea of technology is to create a freer world, and we should build technologies with that intention in mind. Now, one of Timothy May's friends, and also part of this cypherpunk renaissance or movement, was Eric Hughes. And Eric Hughes wrote the Cypherpunk Manifesto. I know these guys are a real big fan of writing manifestos. And Eric Hughes is important because he foresaw the coming of cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. If you've ever read the Cypherpunk Manifesto, he mentions that eventually we would create a digital technique for transferring value to each other in a way that is uncensorable, and that in a way that we could keep money and value to ourselves. So, and it's no surprise that after these cypherpunk ideas came to the forefront, that a decade later, we finally saw the emergence of Bitcoin. And does anybody know what happened just prior to the emergence of Bitcoin? And it was primarily in the United States, but it also happened globally. There we go. So there was a housing bubble and a financial crisis that literally taught us that enough is enough, that finally we have a technology that can allow us to keep our own money, because a lot of people got hurt and harmed deeply during the financial crisis. People lost a lot of money, and it was all because we can't trust central bankers. We can't trust any of these individuals, bureaucrats, to control our money. We have to be able to have access to our own assets, and we have to be able to understand where that money is going to and from and how it works. And cryptocurrency was the magical solution that emerged, specifically Bitcoin, to address this problem. Now, I mentioned the cypherpunks. Their whole goal was using this technology to create freedom. So there was a problem with Bitcoin as we've moved into the future. I've got to discuss the politics a little bit because it's important to the cypherpunk story. One of the ideas that Satoshi Nakamoto had, who was the creator, the enigmatic creator of Bitcoin, the idea was to have decentralized peer-to-peer cash that could be used by everybody in an extremely efficient manner. And again, the purpose was to undermine trusted third parties. And that's actually mentioned in the white paper. But Bitcoin, BTC, has morphed into something entirely different at this point. Instead of being peer-to-peer decentralized cash, it has now turned into a digital commodity, something more akin to digital gold. And I'm not saying that idea by itself is absolutely flawed. I think that that's a great idea for the accumulation of wealth. However, that is not a great idea for realizing this cypherpunk dream. In order to realize this dream, we have to continue to have mass adoption in a technology. And if a cryptocurrency gets to where it has problems like Bitcoin did last December, does any remember what the fees were on Bitcoin? It's about $20 to send a transaction, which makes it unusable if you want to use it on a daily basis as cash. And that was unfortunate because I believe in the cypherpunk mission. I believe in spreading this technology to as many people as possible so that we can continue to grow and to transform society, to manufacture God, if you will. Now, there is another interesting aspect of this that means we have to remain vigilant with this technology. So one of the problems that Bitcoin inherently had, or possible problems, I'm not going to say it's a damning quality, but there's a difference between on-chain and off-chain governance models. So in a blockchain, when you want to create some type of new direction, you have to have a Bitcoin improvement proposal. This is for Bitcoin specifically. And basically, everybody has to, the developers, entrepreneurs, visionaries, they all have to kind of duke it out to determine the direction that a blockchain grows in. And with Bitcoin, it all has to occur off-chain. So what this means is that we have to come to a consensus in such a way where we understand each other and we have unity in the community. If not, that blockchain is destined to fork, as we call it, and create a new iteration of that token that has different new emergent properties, or qualities that developers placed into it. So what happened with Bitcoin, luckily, is that we created Bitcoin Cash, and Bitcoin Cash, the goal is to be easily transferable forms of cash that everybody can take advantage of and use to meet the cypherpunk dream, to come to terms with this idea that we need to get this technology in the hands of as many people as possible. Now, another cool thing about this idea of governance on a blockchain is that around the same period of time that all this arguing and squabbling was going on in the Bitcoin community, there was also a Cambrian explosion of blockchain systems, of cryptocurrencies. They started cropping up everywhere, different ways to run and manage a blockchain, different types of cryptocurrencies. And one of the exciting inventions, I believe, was Ethereum. And there's different blockchains that look just like Ethereum, and Diego talked a little bit about smart contracts. But the cool thing about Ethereum and the smart contracting applicability is that now we can create decentralized autonomous organizations. And I like this a lot because it goes back to this idea of what we're building is truly magnificent and truly great. And that is this notion that we can use blockchains as a way to form governance models across various territorial regions, which means that we can keep with the anarchist spirit of doing away with the nation state. Fred Ursum wrote a really great article on this. You can look it up on Medium. It's called Blockchain Governance, Programming Our Future. And just to give a few concrete examples of what's already going on with DAOs, so there's a platform built on top of Ethereum that's called Aragon. And on Aragon, you can actually build companies. You could even build governments. You can do crowdfunding. And it's all democratized over the blockchain. And this will inevitably help us destroy the problems with statism as we know it and allow us to create systems of governance in any territory. Now, when we inevitably create these DAOs, right now there's a few kinks that need to be worked out of these systems. They're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. We're also dealing with a nasty market of scams and fraud coins and all kinds of other malarkey. But when we iron these problems out, we will create these governance models, and we'll have to learn to deal with living in societies that on a more voluntary, anarchic basis. And there's an idea that I like that an economist from George Mason University came up with called futarchy. And futarchy is a very, I'd say, deep concept, sprawling concept, but it's at its core, it's simple. It's this notion that we can use prediction markets and leverage the wisdom of the crowd to vote on policies, really to bet on policies in a given society. Meaning if you want to change something, you have to put your money where your mouth is. So just a brief example, say we want to bail out the banks. There would be a vote yes and a vote no. The vote that gets the highest monetary value in this prediction market is the vote that would go through. So in order to live in this society, you have to be willing to bet on the future goodwill of that society. You have to optimize for the best solution. And these are the kind of models that are going to crop up in society that are going to grow and allow us to live in a more interconnected world. Now, I think where we're going is absolutely amazing, and I think we are going to realize the cypherpunk dream. I think in a way we are going to manufacture God. Kurzweil, in his book I've been reading, referred to as the age of spiritual machines, is that this trajectory is inevitable. We've already reached an inflection point technologically where everything is starting to grow and develop at an exponential pace. This is what he refers to as the law of accelerating returns. And there's no way that we can just hit the off button on this. We're going to develop all of these technologies, blockchain included, virtual reality technologies, nanotechnologies, bioengineering. The whole gamut is going to combine to create a truly amazing future society. Now, there's a lot of potential problems with this model. There's a lot of wrong directions we could go. We could make a bad decision. Everyone's heard of the potential problems with artificial intelligence, especially if you start bootstrapping it to various blockchains and decentralized autonomous organizations. That can end up very bad for us. You know, Elon Musk has been an outspoken individual on the potential downfall that artificial intelligence can cause. But here's where I think the solution lies to this. Allow us to manufacture God, realize the cypherpunk dream. And that's through this notion that in order to make the right decision, we have to maintain human connections with each other. We have to remember that we possess this quality of empathy and connectedness. And if we can work together with each other and build strength in this community, we can make something amazing and without going down the wrong path. That's why this political issue is so important with the Bitcoin blockchain. If we can't manage to find connection with each other and we go down the wrong path, we are going to be doomed either to death or to enslavement by machines, because this techno-renaissance and development of artificial intelligence with blockchains is going to happen. For anybody who's interested in digging more into this idea of making connections and learning to empathize with each other, take a look at Marshall Rosenberg's work on nonviolent communication. That has been my mission, and I've worked in that area as well as technology for a long time. And I hope to continue working in that area, and I hope that everybody in this space, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're a developer, whether you're an innovator, whether you're an influencer, no matter who you are, I believe that if we continue working together to help make these technologies the best and most positive qualities that they can have, I think we'll move into the future without any kind of regrets, and we'll ultimately make the right decisions. Thank you.
Minutes. You thought you have to be in Germany, you have to be punctual, yeah? But you could have. But even better, we have more time for questions. We should have a microphone now. Do we have a microphone? So I think there are lots of questions to Sterlin, right? Do you agree with this?
Any questions, thoughts, considerations?
Yeah, please.
Relationship between I got this question about the relationship between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash.
Sure.
Which actually I think is at the center of our whole development in this direction, call it God, whatever. Wouldn't it have been more wise to just work on the existing original source, like Bitcoin, the product of the Cypherpunks movement, and make it faster?
Right.
Instead of building another coin? I mean, just a very principle, but a question that really comes from the bottom of my heart.
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is a very difficult and challenging situation, of course. And I think one of the things that prevented that was the fact that we didn't have on-chain governance, and there were people on both sides of the coin that had very strong opinions on the direction that Bitcoin should go. So it sort of naturally created that divisiveness. I personally wish we would have worked together to try to build and continue building Bitcoin together. That would have been the best path to take. But unfortunately, a situation cropped up where individuals wanted to take the scaling a lot slower, and they wanted to commodify Bitcoin. But me and a number of other people included wanted to keep Bitcoin adhered to Satoshi Nakamoto's original vision, and that's this idea that it should be decentralized, peer-to-peer cash. So yes, I agree with you. I think that it would have been great if we could have stuck on-chain and worked together to build it, but unfortunately that's not the trajectory that we took. So I think, and to further answer your question, I think going forward, I think we have to figure out ways to continue to work together and find ways to bridge divides, regain some trust in the community, and learn to empathize. Because if we don't, we're not going to be able to leverage our trust with each other to build this technology up for the creation of God, for building anarchistic free worlds. So, hope that. Yeah, you're
Great
welcome.
answer. More questions? Yeah, please. Mic for the lady.
So hi, I'm Crystal Stranger from P-Counts, and we're actually involved in very similar things because we're using AI and blockchain to help people who are being displaced by AI when they start businesses and need financial support. But I actually, in some ways, I disagree with some of what you see for the future, and I see very different things happening right now. And what do you think about when governments are creating cryptocurrencies, as I see that that's happening a lot and probably will happen a lot moving forward?
I'm really glad you asked that question. I've had quite a bit of experience with that particular question and with my own job traveling around and speaking at different conferences. And the thing that I've noticed now is that governments have actually gotten relegated to a competitor now. They can build all of their blockchains that they want, which really aren't going to be blockchains. It's going to be a centralized server with a blockchain nomenclature. In reality, it's just going to be FedCoin. If anybody's familiar with Andreas Antonopoulos, he's talked about this a lot, and he always says, who's going to use FedCoin, right? Because you can still choose to use these other coins. Now, they could institute a law that says you have to use this particular cryptocurrency or we're going to hurt you. But I think with the trajectory of this technology, the innovative growth, I think that would be a horrible move for any government to enact, because it's going to push people out of those geographies into places that are more safe havens for the cryptocurrency technologies. So I think they'll do it and they'll continue to grow it, but I don't think it's going to have an impact because now they're a competitor. You know, they're going to use FedCoin that's completely traceable when they can maybe come over here and just use Monero and use untraceable transactions. So, and just a little side note to this, or anecdote, I was in Mongolia actually last December, and I spoke with the Mongolian government in their Ministry of Foreign Affairs office. And it was really funny because I didn't know I was going to do that. They had that plan for me when I got there, and I'm like, oh, I'm speaking to the government? I don't know if this is going to end up being a good thing or not. But I was able to be diplomatic and basically tell them in a way they're going obsolete and going to be gone, and tried doing that diplomatically, by the way. But I think they understand now that they have to figure out how to build technologies where they can work together with the people. And just by the way, Mongolia is like a safe haven for cryptocurrency people right now.
Do you think they'll really be gone, though, or will it be more like in the sovereign individual, where they talk about governments competing for the citizenship, like we see right now with e-citizenship in Estonia, or some of these other island nations that are doing that?
Right. I should have mentioned this in my presentation, but specifically, I think that governance models will still be open, and people will be able to they'll be able to compete with each other globally. But I think that government, as we know it, where a group of men have a monopoly on the initiation of force over a large geographical region, will be done away with, and we can now voluntarily choose what governance models that we want to live under. I think that's what will happen. I hope that's what will happen.
Thank you.
One more question, please, and then the next question then off stage, please. Wait for the mic, please, so we can all hear you. It's there in 1 second.
Yeah, I just want to know what you think of Bitcoin private.
What I think of what?
Bitcoin private.
To be honest with you, I haven't looked a lot into Bitcoin private. I know Bitcoin's forked, a million times by now, and I definitely don't know about all of the iterations of it. So I can't give you an honest answer on that.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
thanks.
Great. Thank you so much, Sterling. And maybe you want to discuss with our next speaker, because he might have a different opinion.